Welcome. I bid you welcome, John Clauser, Johnny Metal, the Metal Dad, coming to you from a music corner of the world. Welcome to another edition of Mortification Monday, that little series where I talk about the Jesus Metal Australian band Mortification. Now, today you're probably going to see me reading a lot of notes because this album, I had to take quite a lot of notes for, because in this particular album, well, let's just say that a lot happened since Envision Evangeline. So, let me just say what the album that we're going to be talking about today is going to be this one called Triumph of Mercy. I've seen some sites say this came out October 6th of 1998. Um, Originally on Nuclear Blast. Frontline would still be kind of taking it on into the Christian stores. Metal Blade Records would also pick it up and take it into mainstream stores, which this is my original CD version of it. And I don't know if you could tell, but there's the Metal Blade logo right there, as well as Row Productions also kind of co-signed with it. So by this point, they sign. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself in the story, but they do sign a 3 record deal with Metal Blade Records to distribute um, their some albums to the mainstream. So but I'll get to that part in just a little bit. This is another version. This would be a remaster. This would come out in 2021. This has a second bonus disc of Live 1998, as well as a number of bonus tracks, demos, and other live versions. But before we even get into the album, okay, let's take a little step back here. 1996, they get to tour the States. Okay. They make a little bit of a tour with a band called Wrench. They get to play a couple of festivals. I believe Cornerstone was one of them. Um, they would also come to one called, I'm going to need to get this one right here, Texas Rock Fest. Here is where Steve Rowe would meet up with a fella named Juan Reyna. And he was with, like I said, he was with a band called Noisegate. They took a look, Steve took a look at him and thought, wow, he really looks gray. He looks um, like he's in pain, like he's very sickly. And it turned out Juan had just been diagnosed with leukemia. But unfortunately, he didn't have health insurance. And so, unless something really miraculous happened, he probably wasn't going to last for very long. And he would eventually pass away not much longer after this particular gig. Amazing that he actually got out and played the gig. Um, so let's see. So it would interesting that this would be a very prophetic sign of things to come. So the band at this time is Lincoln Bowen on guitar, Keith Bannister on drums, and of course Steve Rowe on drums, on bass and vocals, main songwriter. Um, at this time, 1996, Lincoln went on to do something in Atlanta with another ministry, and Keith and Steve wound up flying back to Australia. Now, mind you, they were doing a tour with a band called Wrench, and the couple of the guys from Wrench had taken Steve and Keith to the hospital or to the airport. When Steve arrives back to Australia, he gets a message from his wife, Kate, that the guys in Wrench on their way back from the airport had it was apparently a night flight, and they had gotten to a pretty severe auto accident. They wound up wrapping of the van they were driving around a tree, and it was said that if Steve, Keith, and Lincoln were still in that van, there was probably a good chance that they weren't going to be around. They were going to be dead. They would have been dead. And it's a miracle that the guys from Wrench were actually alive. Um, So Steve, the guy from Wrench, told Steve, "Yeah, that's a sign that you're gonna live." Um, so they get back to Australia and they start kind of getting into um, different road production things, and there's a lot of other financial things that Steve's trying to sort out, and he starts feeling a lot of different kind of pains, like in his rib cage and into his lower back and his hips, and it just was getting to a point where they felt, hey, we need to get a blood test. We let's run some blood tests. Now, prior to this, he was for the pain, he was given a lot of aspirin. Now, this becomes crucial because that pain never went away. It just kept getting worse and worse and worse. They do the blood test, and Steve gets news that nobody wants to ever hear: leukemia. What he has is called acute lymphoblastic leukemia with a Philadelphia chromosome. The way Steve describes this is the worst one you can possibly get as far as leukemias go. Now, this is the mid 90s, so there had been a lot of work, a lot of research done to kind of advance um, treatments for this type of leukemia. It apparently is not something that's easily um, maybe not, it wasn't recognizable. And probably back in the 50s, if you caught something like this, you pretty much were gone in no time. Um, so so basically what this kind of leukemia is, it's a cancer of the lymphoid line of blood cells, and it's characterized by the development of a large number of basically immature lymphocytes. Now, there's a lot of medical technical terms. Maybe, I'm just going to give you very basic information and then you can go and look all this kind of stuff up. Again, the feelings, your symptoms are you could be feeling tired, pale skin. Juan Reyna from Noisegate looked really gray. Fever, easy bleeding, or bruising. Um, you have enlarged lymph nodes, bone pain. And if you don't catch this early, yes, it can be fatal. Sorry, all this talking. Over the course of a year and a half, Steve would be going under so many trials and tribulations, near death experiences. He would also develop a spinal fluid cancer, which I know all about that too well from stuff like this. You, if there's any of my videos that you ever go back to watch, there's one where I talk about my great nephew Sammy. He was diagnosed just shortly after the age of turning 3 with a very rare uh, pediatric cancer called AT/RT, which attacks the spinal fluid and the brain. So I know a lot about these spinal fluid cancers. Um, so, uh, so you add that into it. So there's a lot of Steve's got to deal with also now. He's losing a lot of mobility, and he has to become he's almost a paraplegic at this point. Um, so there's a lot more into Steve's story that I could really go into here. I think if you ever pick this album up, there Steve gives basically crib notes versions of what goes on. So with that being said, now let's also go into this a little bit more. Now let's get into the album itself. So by this point in the around the summer for us of 1998, he Steve gets a call from Bill Metoyer of Metal Blade. Now, me as a major Metal Blade fan, I know Bill Metoyer's name. Was either engineered, mixed, produced, or was involved some way in a lot of the different Metal Blade records. back in the 80s into the 90s and so forth. And I think he still is. And so he gets a call from Steve, and they talk about it. Um, they want to, they want to bring some Christian bands into the mainstream stores, and so this is where Metal Blade comes in. And so yeah, they get to do a couple of albums on the Metal Blade label. Um, it's basically now we can get into the songs because I think this is where it's going to tell the rest of the story here. So the first song here is a song called "At War with War." This is a very powerful groove thrasher, essentially just being that faithful servant of God, and regardless of what anybody thinks in the public, if if you're serving Christ and you're making a public spectacle of yourself to the point where you're serving yourself more so than you're serving Christ, then you're not really you're not projecting what it really means to be a Christian. And so there's always this constant war, and there's so many war, battle with the flesh and all these different things. Very strong opener song. Triumph of Mercy, the title track. This is essentially Steve's biography here to music. This is about a 7 minute or so, just up and down musically. It it's constructed so well that it flows wonderfully with all the different ebbs and flows of the story. Nice solo here by Lincoln Bowen, but this essentially tells you all of the things. And essentially, here is where Steve's unwavering faith, Steve and Kate and the Rowe family, this is where their unwavering faith came to light because there was so much the doctors and medicine could do, but Steve believed that God could perform a miracle here. Yes, it left Steve very hampered throughout the rest of his life, and still is hampered. Don't want to talk about him in the past tense. The day I record this is the day after his 60th birthday, and as far as I know, please, Steve, I hope you're still with us. I haven't heard anything from him personally, but Steve's unwavering faith said, "We are going to give this to God. We're going to trust God is going to pull us through." Okay, it's a wonderful, wonderful testimony. Next song, Welcome to the Palindrome. This is another grinder, another song again about giving all to Christ, and just, the problems of life are always going to be there. But, but there's always so much more to look forward to when you're in Christ. And I know this had to be what Steve was thinking as he laid in those hospital beds, getting the chemotherapy, getting all these different treatments, one day being told he may only have a few hours left to live, or whatever the situation was. He gave it all to God and he just said, "Bring it on. I know I'm going to have problems, but I'm going to keep trusting in you." Okay. From Your Side, this song, I believe, also co-written with Keith Bannister. Let me just say this: Keith Bannister, according to Steve here, is the MVP of Mortification at this point, and I would put Lincoln Bowen as a very very tight close second. But Keith did a lot of stuff in the Row Productions business side of things. There was so much Keith was doing, and it was just amazing to see the work that he was doing. So Keith Bannister, if you ever get to see this, love you, brother, and love you, Lincoln. You guys were, and all of the members, past and present of Mortification, love you. From Your Side, another riff chord banger here. This is encouraging the listener again to turn to Christ amidst all this evil in this world. It's what will save the world, and it's got another tasty Lincoln solo here. Influence, again, one of my absolute favorite Mortification songs. Bass intro, leads into this kind of this mid-tempo chord chugger. You get these emotional bridges, high bass note. You get these little um, uh, just chord sequences from Lincoln. You got this great Keith drum pattern in the back. But again, this is just Steve saying, "For those who don't believe, will be condemned." And it's just again, it's just praising God. But to those who don't believe, though, for those who want to look for um fame over salvation, fame is fleeting. This my YouTube channel is nothing in my world to me if I just don't give God all the credit. Okay, I'm just going to say that right now. And I don't find myself to be famous. I don't think of myself as famous. Don't ever want to think of myself as famous. I want to think of myself as God's and as a follower of Jesus. But this song sounds so wonderful live as well. Steve gets the crowd into it, and there's just this wonderful feeling. You hear the joy in Steve's voice when he sings this song, and he just is encouraging the crowd to turn to God. It's a wonderful, wonderful song. Next one, Drain Dweller, Hope for the Homeless and the Ones Who Struggle with Life. Another banger of a rhythm, frantic Lincoln track here. Raw is a Stonewood Temple. This is another powerful, straight ahead banger. Again, just encouraging that listener to seek Christ in all of this darkness. The, it's just a raw and genuine worship of God. More tasty Lincoln wah wah solos here. Great track. Unified truth. We are all equal in God's eyes. And again, today, January 20th, as I record this, is MLK Day. And that is something that, I have a dream, that Martin Luther King would see everybody come together. We're still fighting it in 2025. We're still fighting this, people. Great chord chugger, great grinding chord chugger. Album ends off with a song called Visited by an Angel. This is another story based from Steve's time in the hospital. A very powerful encounter with an angel. Um, I love the line in this song, and Steve has referenced something this. Visited by an angel, a beautiful love song, surrounded by a clouded light, the joy was overwhelming. Who are you? I mustered from a shaken breath. I am an angel, especially to minister to you today. Don't go away, I pleaded. I never do. It smiled. This is something that Steve would say in his own journals. And this is the feeling of comfort that Steve would feel um, with this, knowing that this angel came to visit him in the hospital, gave him the comfort that knowing he was going to be okay and that God was by his side. Wonderful album closer. Beautiful, beautiful track. I want to show the back of the album here. Again, from the vinyl release that came out in 2020 uh, by Troy Dunmeyer, I believe that was did this. You have Steve here, chemotherapy, and basically, you know, fighting for his life, you know, trying to escape the jaws of death. But here, knowing that Steve has given all to God, he knows with the Bible in his hand, he's here by the river in the garden of life. And he knows that this is where he will, whenever day he sees it, he will spend eternity right here. This is a beautiful album cover here. I love this as well, where you're another Dunmeyer cover. Um, Again, Steve just resting in the arms and the peace of God, visited by the angels. So there you go, folks. Triumph of Mercy, 1998. What do you think about this album if you're a Mortification fan, if you've been following up to this point? This album would be the first album that I essentially would get in real time. From here out, everything I get from Mortification is I get in real time. And so the memories run really strong from here out for me. So I look forward to keep going with this series. Okay. So with that being said, John Clauser, Johnny Metal, the Metal Dad saying rock forever, y'all. And we'll see you next week when we talk about some more Mortification. God bless and God rules.